Welcome to Rays of Hope, Masikhanye, a Christian lifestyle talk show that seeks to empower families, individuals, and societies so that they can lead lives that make this world a better place. This is inspired by the biblical injunctive that you are the light of the world. So you go out and let your light shine. And today, as we are this month, are looking into the theme of hope for the African family. And you cannot speak about family and not speak about marriage. And so today, I am joined by one of our resident pastors to look into biblical principles for marriage preparation. Pastor Mandla Lupondwana, welcome to Rays of Hope.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
An interesting one. I'm really looking forward to this one. Now, in the Bible, biblically speaking, where does the Bible locate the importance of marriage for families?
Right at the beginning, when God creates human beings, He creates Adam and Eve, and He creates them and then tells them to be fruitful and multiply. That's childbearing. Sure. And so, of course, the childbearing is going to happen through intimacy, sure. Sexual intimacy. Sure. So you find that it becomes the foundational relationship in the Bible. It's the relationship where you have sexual intimacy, where you have children. So by the time it's talking about filling the earth, these children who are going to fill the earth come from this primary relationship between the two. Okay. Now remember, Adam's first relationship was with God. Before Eve was there. And Eve's first relationship was with God before she saw Adam. But the first human relationship that establishes the family is the marriage between the husband and the wife. And that's the importance you find in the Bible, that this becomes a building block for the family and then for society.
So biblically speaking, you are saying to me that God's intentions for family had to start via
marriage. Yes. Okay. That's a template that you see.
Of course, things have changed
drastically
in that there is now the presence of sin.
Yes.
When God, as the Bible teaches, started this, there was no sin.
Yes.
But now that we have sin, would you say that marriage is still as necessary for family?
In fact, to take that question a bit further, would it still be relevant in a world where the divorce rate is very high?
Sure.
Even if you put it at 50%, 50%, those who are not divorced, a number of them are still unhappy to be in their marriages. So the question would be, why still do it?
Sure.
And the answer is it's still probably your best bet as an individual and both for childbearing. Let's talk about the individual. Sure. When we think of marriage, we're talking about the healthy marriage. And in our minds, when we wonder about the relevance of marriage, we're usually thinking about an unhealthy marriage versus being single,
sure.
And happily single versus, Sure. But if you look at being in a healthy marriage and being happily single, for yourself, for purpose of having a companion, a spouse, someone to go through life with, someone to do stuff with, it's probably preferable, unless you're actually okay with being single, then it's not a problem. When it comes to child rearing, raising a child as a couple, husband and wife, in a healthy marriage, sure. is still a better option than doing it on your own. So yes, even for someone who's going to say, I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form, they might be spiritual but not religious, and therefore I think I can do this on my own. Still, to be in a healthy marriage, to start a family, still I would think would be your best bet, even in today's world. Now, when you get married, no spouse comes with a guarantee, boom, 5-year guarantee, this will be a good spouse. No marriage. Even in church, we are unable to issue a 10-year guarantee. This marriage will be great for 10 years. We can't. So everybody kind of gambles when you walk into marriage. You're hoping that the spouse you're getting is actually going to work and this marriage is going to work out. Sure. 50% of the time, it's not really the case. The other times, well, we're still working on that.
Now, look, you've done a good job in basically arguing for the relevance still of marriage. Yeah. Now, if it is that relevant, and the Bible teaches that it is, does the Bible then give us principles for why and how we should get married?
Let's start with the why. The Bible doesn't tell us why we should get married, other than the fact that when you're married, you're supposed to be fruitful and fill the earth, subdue it, and then have dominion over blah, blah, blah. But beyond that, it doesn't tell you why you should get married. It doesn't tell you that you should get married because you want someone who's going to give you money, or because you are in love, or because your parents arranged it. There's no such.
Sure.
So it's just that you get married. Now, why you do it is yours. And different cultures have done it for different reasons.
Okay.
For a very long time, our cultures have done it because we just needed to perpetuate. We needed to make sure that the next generation is there. It was for survival. In some cultures, they also did it to manage wealth. So we, the wealthy Lupondwanas, hook up with the wealthy Kotelas, and we agree our children are going to get married to keep the wealth in the family. So there's been no reason as to this is why you get married. But once you are in, then the Bible says, aha,
This is why you should not get out.
Now this is how you do it when you are in. This is how you do it when you are in. And this is why you hear texts that talk about loving your wife as Christ loved the church. And the key thing here is as Christ loves the church, because we tend to do it as our cultures recommend, or submit to your husband as to the Lord. Key there, as to the Lord, not this abusive stuff that you see out there. So you find that once you are in, then the Bible talks. But why you should get in? No. As a result, we are unable from the Bible to say arranged marriages are bad, or romantic marriages are bad, or people who marry because they say, well, I'm trying to run away from home. That's necessarily a bad reason. No, people have married for all kinds of reasons. But once they are in, Scripture is able to guide us to why we do it, how we do it when we are inside. Now that's the why part.
Sure.
The how. The Bible is still silent on the how. It doesn't prescribe whether people get married through lobola, through an engagement, through signing at some civil institution, by doing it through some traditional ceremony. You just take someone and live with them. There is no real prescription as to how you get in to the marriage. And this is very important because we have had different experiences. In this part of the world, we have kind of thought that the Christian wedding, therefore, was the Western way of doing it. And it was not a Christian, because even those who were not Christians still went and had their white dresses and blah, 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 and got married in a formal ceremony. But we then thought that is how God prescribes people should get married.
Sure.
It was essentially a civil marriage where people signed husband, wife, and there was a whole regime that followed it. But because the Bible doesn't prescribe it, different ways of getting into marriage are equally valid. Whether you do it according to your custom, or according to your traditions, or according to the laws of the state. But if at the end of the day you end up being husband and wife, how you got in, that's not what the Bible prescribes.
Sure. All right. Now, you've answered both these questions that I had, but let's go back to the first one, the why.
Yes.
I mean, you see every day, you said, you shouldn't get married for money. Yes. People say that. And sometimes we even attach morality, and a sense of righteousness to that. And now you say the Bible is silent on why we should get married. Yes. But are there reasons that, when you use biblical principles, are right to get married, and the reasons that are wrong to get married for?
I'm not sure about the wrong reasons to get married. Because for them to be wrong, there must be a standard, an objective standard biblically, why you should get in. But I think there are poor reasons why people can get married. Reasons that are not sustainable.
Sure.
Let's assume you marry someone because they're good looking. Well, I'll give you 15, 20 years. You'll probably change your mind about the good looks. Also because there's always an upgrade. There's always someone who looks better than your spouse. So that one may be hard to sustain. Let's assume that you probably want to get married because you're running away from home. You're currently under pressure, you don't get along with your parents and blah, 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 and you feel your best route is to find a husband, get married. Guess what happens? Once you mature and you no longer have that pressure, it's not such a great idea anymore. So the poor reasons we talk about are those reasons that are really not sustainable in the marriage. And for a while, marrying someone because you love them was also a very poor reason. We're kind of recovering from that because people fell in love. Romanticism came with the idea that you marry someone because you love them. Why spend the rest of your life with someone who just build a family when you could be in love? You can be swept off your feet. And so, but what happens when you fall out of love? Because the feelings, they come and go. They move like waves. And then what happens? What happens when the daily nature of marriage has taken away the excitement of it? Do you then walk away?
Sure.
What happens when you get fed up with your spouse's idiosyncrasies? Do you walk away? And so the idea that I'm going to marry you because I'm in love with you, at some point it was a very poor reason because people do fall out of love. Sure. And then you want commitment from something else. And then they start talking about stay for the sake of the kids, but that's not why you came in. So when we talk about poor reasons, we talk about those reasons that are really not very sustainable,
Sure.
that are going to keep you in the marriage. But the Bible does not give you the reason to say this is why you get in, this is a good reason to get in, this is a bad reason to get in. So we can't tell people, when are you married for money? So don't get married. No, there are people who've had very successful marriages, godly marriages, and they married for money. But of course, it was put nicely. He was a good provider. That was it. And that when you put it like that, great provider, it just sounds like it was a good reason. Someone can say, I was swept off my feet. Sometimes because the person looked good. But we generally find good language to pose it. But you can't go to the Bible and say, this is the right one, this is the wrong one.
Sure. Now, maybe this will be my last question. We normally, when we talk about preparing for marriage, we normally talk about what to look for in another person. And rightly so, it takes two, it takes two individuals to have a marriage. That is true. But you are also part of that. I'm going to ask you a question. What kind of person should you be? Does the Bible say, as you contemplate marriage, before you get married, who should you be? What should you be bringing into this relationship, number one? Number two, are there also biblical principles for what you should be looking for in the person that you're going to be married to?
The Bible seems to emphasize one thing, matters of religion. And you find it both in the Old and the New Testament. The New Testament talks about it being, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. In the Old Testament, it talks about don't marry or give your children to marriage to these nations, blah, blah, blah. And the issue there seems to be the religious differences. People who do not share your faith in God, these are the people that you avoid marrying. That's what you get. Now, in terms of the qualities should you and the personalities that you should look for, the Bible is silent on that, and it leaves it up to you.
Sure.
In terms of what you bring to the marriage as well, when you read the Bible, it's not explicit, but you get a sense that you need to be probably very secure in yourself. Let me talk about for us men. If you're going to say as a Christian man, I'm looking for a wife, you must be open that your wife could end up being a Proverbs 31 woman, which means very self-sufficient woman who runs her own business, who runs her own shows, got her own employees, who doesn't need a penny from you, who's running staff, who's got her own reputation, who has her people praising her purely for what she's doing, and all you there as probably as a husband is you are supporting her even though you may be doing your own thing. So if you feel you can't handle that kind of a woman, probably because she will eclipse you, well, probably we need to work a little bit on you, because you're going to struggle with that kind of woman. And it's not because when you have a woman who's self-sufficient, who's able to successfully run her life and not depend on anyone financially, that woman is unchristian. That's your Proverbs 31 woman.
Sure.
So that is a version of a Christian woman. That's a biblical woman, and that's perfectly okay to have one. So if you feel not ready for that, then don't get married to a Proverbs 31 woman, because it's going to be too much. And you can't attack her for being like that and say that it's big. Now, we usually hide behind culture. No, they're an African woman. Why? Because we are struggling to attend them biblically. Sure. But the same applies when you are going to come to the marriage as a man. If you don't see yourself loving someone, and the modifier here is as Christ loves the church, you're gonna have an uphill battle. And this is where you need your relationship with God to be solid, in the sense that you are able to spend time with Him and be open to being transformed by God, so that you can be able to love as Christ loves the church. And that's it. Not as how we call some men do it, but as Christ loves the church. Sure. And same applies when you're a woman trying to get married. I generally would say there's this thing of submit to your husband as to the Lord. Sure. Now, if the person is going to make it difficult for you to do that, don't marry them. You basically, it's not going to work out for you. Sure. And so those are the things you walk into the relationship with. When you're looking for somebody, you have to look at yourself and say, I'm not the kind of person who can probably stomach a lot of things. Therefore, maybe I shouldn't be getting into this marriage thing until I've learned how to love. And if you feel that, I'm willing to submit to reasonable stuff, and we should discuss submission as well, because Christ kind of qualifies it somewhere else. But if you feel that this particular person is a hard person to live with, to make a success of a marriage with, you walk away. That's not going to work for you. Sometimes we've gotten into marriage only to find that the people we chose to be married to make it difficult for us to stay in this marriage happily and enjoy it as a blessing.
Now, in less than a minute, what are some of the myths that are prevalent about what the Bible teaches about preparing for marriage?
When people think about the Bible, they generally think that the Bible prescribes how you get in. It prescribes why you get in. And sometimes it prescribes the fact that when you get into a marriage, as a man, you should probably be out earning your prospective wife, which is not necessarily true.
Sure.
But these are the myths that are there. And they've messed us up in the sense that young men have walked away from people they could have had amazing marriages with, but simply because they feel, this one out earns me, so I don't think this is going to work. But it's important for us to know that the Bible sees this more as a partnership, especially in Genesis chapter 1. These are two people who God speaks to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the whole earth. I mean, this is a team He's sending out there to conquer the whole world. And once we understand it that way, we're looking for a teammate who can do this with us for life.
Doing this thing for life. That is a perfect place to end this. Pastor Mandla Lupondwana, thank you once again for joining us on the Rays of Hope.
Thank you.
Viewers at home, we trust that you enjoyed that. We are not yet done. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon.
Every community has its ups and downs, its joys and its sorrows, from informal traders, children to pensioners. Everyone sometimes needs an ear to hear. Do you need prayer? Chat with the Cape Conference virtual pastor.
Welcome back to Rays of Hope Masikhanye. I am still Sivu, your host. And right now we're going to be looking into the legal preparations before one gets married. And to help me look into that, I am joined by Thabile Nekile, Thabile, who is an admitted attorney working in the retirement fund space. Thabile, welcome to Rays of Hope.
Thank you, Pastor.
You know this, that when we speak about marriage, it's easy to concentrate on the church side and the romantic side and the paying of lobola, but we hardly speak about the thing that becomes a big part of getting married: wills, estate, money. Has that also been your observation?
Definitely. When people are preparing to get married, they are thinking about the wedding. Preparations for the wedding, which cake are we going to buy, which rings are we going to buy, the venue, etc. It's very rarely that you sit down and say, by the way, how do we want our property to be managed? And it's what we term the marital property regime.
Marital property regimes, what is that?
So basically, you have to decide how your marriage will be governed, or how the property, your belongings, your finances in your marriage, how do you want them to be governed and managed? Do you want them to be in community of property or to be married in community of property?
Okay.
Do you want to be married out of community of property with accrual?
Okay.
Do you want to be married out of community of property without accrual?
Okay. So you've mentioned, many of us have never even made that decision. It seems to be, has been made for us naturally, but you are saying that there are three options. Out of property, out of
marriage,
yes.
In community of property.
Yes.
Marriage out of community of property with accrual.
And then without
marriage
accrual.
Out of community of property.
Without accrual.
Without accrual.
Okay. I'm here to learn, and I'm sure the viewers at home are looking forward to the learning. Now, let's go through each of the three. Let's start at the top.
Marriage in community of property.
Yes, let's start there. What is it, and what are the positives and what are the negatives of it?
Okay.
But let's start first by defining it.
All right. So if you decide that you are going to get married in community of property, what you need to understand is that legally, if you don't decide, that's a default option anyway. You will be married in community of property if you don't consider.
Sure.
how you want to be married.
So if you don't state, they don't even ask you, are you sure? But they just take it for granted that this is what you are going to be doing.
It's automatic.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So basically what it means is that you want what is yours
Sure.
to be his.
Okay.
So I'll talk about his because I'm a lady.
Sure.
But it can be vice versa, you understand?
Yeah.
Whatever debts he incurred before getting married to you, you want to inherit those debts.
Sure.
So basically, as they call it, what's yours is mine.
Okay. And what mine is yours.
And what's
Yeah,
mine is yours till
sure.
death. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it will be from the date of marriage.
Sure.
Anything before marriage is also included in the marriage, and anything after the marriage as well.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Excuse me. Now, tell me, what are the positives, if there are any, and what are the negatives, if there are any?
So the positives are that basically you are building together, right?
Sure.
And you have an opportunity to support each other,
Sure.
to look after each other. You are working towards the common goal.
Sure.
And basically, you are equally entitled to whatever you build up in marriage.
Sure.
Yes,
Okay.
those are the advantages.
Okay, those would be the pros and the cons.
The cons would be that if the person incurred any debt
Sure.
before they got married, you know, and the debt can be as far as, let's say, there are maintenance claims. Maybe the person was married before, or maybe the person has other kids and is liable for them. If it defaults on making payment, it's on you, both of you. You'll be liable. Another disadvantage is that should one of you become insolvent, you are jointly liable. And the estate, that is the joint estate, both of you are regarded as insolvent.
Sure. I mean, another day I will invite you and we talk about why is it default. But maybe let's not have that conversation now. And then thank you for that. You've just given us the first one in community. And then the second one, you said it's out of community with accrual.
So with accrual.
Yes, with accrual.
Right. Maybe let me just explain what it means.
Yes, please.
Okay. So what it means is that, first of all, what is yours, what is mine. Before we get married. So let's take, for example, that I had an inheritance from my grandmother or from my family. And I don't want this inheritance to form part of our marital regime, basically the property in our marriage. So I would say, okay, whatever I accrued before I met you, with due respect, I worked hard for it. May it remain mine. I mean, there could be also good reasons. Maybe, again, I'll use the same example. You have another family, you know, and you own property, or the property is in the name of your children. I'm just making an example. So you don't want that to form part of this marriage estate or marital regime. And then the accrual part is that whatever you grow together, whatever assets you grow together, whatever liabilities you grow together after marriage or during the marriage, then they form part of your marital regime.
I'm with you. And what would be the pros? Maybe let's start with the pros of choosing in community with accrual.
With accrual.
Yes. The positives.
Okay. So the positives are that, let's take, for example, someone who decides to be a stay-in mom or a stay-in dad. If they stay at home and they are married, we are going to touch on the one without accrual. If they are married out of community of property without accrual, it means it's not even possible to recognize any efforts that they might be put by that stay-in at-home mom in the running of the household, in raising up children, and also looking maybe after this, you know, husband's career, etc. So with accrual, basically what it's saying is it's protecting what you built up before you got married. It could be for interests of other parties, like maybe your previous children or previous family. But at the same time, the advantage is that whatever you grow together, you can share it
Sure,
equally.
sure,
Yes.
sure.
So that's one of the major advantages.
All right. Thank you so much. And now you've just given us the pros, the advantages. And are there any disadvantages?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Especially when you are preparing for marriage. I don't know whether it's a disadvantage or not, but the fact that you have to go and consult an attorney now to draft your prenup, as it's fondly called, but it's called an antenuptial contract or a prenuptial contract, where you specify what is it you want that should be excluded from the marriage, what is it that should be included in the marriage. So there are some costs involved. And also it becomes very difficult to calculate what has accrued in the marriage. Yeah, and sometimes because what's yours still remains yours and what's his still remains his, but you need to calculate what you've accrued. So it can be very tedious.
Yes,
exactly.
No, definitely.
And the person because at the end of the day, whatever you've accrued, you share equally. So if I've accrued less, then I can claim from the spouse that has accrued more. So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage, but it's one of the consequences.
I understand. Thank you, Thabile. And then you mentioned the third one to be without accrual, and out of commitment, but without accrual. Please define that for me first.
Okay, so you get married out of commitment of property without accrual. So it means that what's yours remains yours. What's mine remains mine.
Even after we get married?
Even after we get married.
Okay. And that's a major distinction between this one and the previous one?
Yes, that's the major difference.
Sure.
Yes.
And what are the pros quickly of pros and cons?
The pros, for example, are that, let's say one of you is involved in business. It's important to protect your household property because, as you know, there was COVID-19 last year and many businesses went under. So in that case, if you had any creditors, they can go against the household if you are married in commitment of property, which is one of the major disadvantages. And they can basically wipe you out. Whereas if you are married out of commitment of property, the creditors can only go after one spouse, thus protecting the other spouse's assets and ensuring that the household is also protected, the children's financial well-being are also protected. So that I would say is the major difference, or rather advantage.
Tell me, because with the previous one, you mentioned that there are some legal costs that are involved in setting it up, and are there also legal costs with this one?
When you get married out of community of property, you also need to enter into a prenup, consult a lawyer, and in the prenup, that's where you specify whether you want your out of community of property to be with accrual or without accrual. And basically, it's a separation. Your assets remain your assets, and my assets remain my assets. Yes.
So thanks for that, Thabile. So with the first one, in community, there are no costs that are involved in setting up because it's by default. You don't pay anything for it to happen.
Exactly.
But if you want to change it, then there are some legal costs that are involved.
Yes.
Okay. But thank you. But tell me, because we are in the African context here, and marriages are not only the ones that are legal. People also get married through what is known as customary law, and they pay lobola, and they don't necessarily sign any contracts. Does the law have any protection or a saying on those?
Definitely.
Okay.
Before 1998, the legal requirements was that there should be a lobola that is paid. And obviously, if, and Lord forbid, should you get divorced, then you'd need to prove that you were married. So that's why the guy would write a letter to the bride's family to say, I want lobola. What's most important is that it's not only the lobola negotiations that are the requirements. It's also the fact that the marriage should be celebrated.
Okay.
And the people getting married should be over 18.
Okay.
Should be adults. And after 1998, right, with the recognition of customary marriage law,
Sure.
the other requirement became that the marriage needs to be registered.
Sure.
So although it's a customary marriage, it needs to be registered at Home Affairs.
Sure.
And as you know, customary marriage also allows people, or let me not say people, allows the male to take more than one wife,
Sure.
to have a polygamous marriage. Yes.
And then in that setup, I mean, with the new law that you've just mentioned, does it mean that the wife that has been married, through customary law, and the wife that has been married through the legal route, do they have same benefits?
Yes,
Okay.
because if your customary marriage is recognized by law,
Sure.
then you are entitled to the same privileges. It's recognized as the same law.
Okay.
And maybe I might add as well that a customary marriage also automatically is deemed to be marriage in community of property.
Ah, okay.
So yes, the woman would have rights as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Thabile. Now, outside of these regimes, what are the other things that you think people should think about as they prepare to get married from a legal, financial perspective?
I would say that, it's important, just generally,
Sure.
to make sure that you've got a will.
Ah, okay.
And your will is up to date.
Okay.
Because drawing up a will, let's say before you got married, after you get married, it's important to change your will. I mean,
Sure.
I've had a friend who passed away. She was remarried, but she had not changed her will. So her husband was not part of, what they could benefit.
Sure.
But fortunately, they were married in community of property, so automatically
Sure.
50% belongs
Yeah.
to him. But a will basically entitles you and enables you to speak when you can't speak anymore. So it's important to have an updated will and to update it all the time. Even in your policies, if you've got life policies, insurance policies, retirement fund policies, make sure that you nominate your beneficiaries and also you update the nomination of your beneficiaries. Don't just do it once and forget about it. Always go and revisit, because it becomes critical, especially in our society when you pass away.
Sure.
People can fight over things. The family can come and, kick you out of your house because your things are not in order.
I love what you said, that, through your will, you can speak even when you can't speak anymore.
Exactly.
When you can protect your loved ones even when you can't be there physically to protect them.
Precisely.
Matabet, this is a good time and a good place to end it. Once again, thank you for your time.
You are welcome, Pastor.
Our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. I trust that you enjoyed that informative, much needed conversation with Mathabete. Please don't go. We will be back soon.
Putting God first can be difficult. In this video, we'll explore what we can learn from Jesus that will help us put God first in our lives today. At the start of every new year, we always hope that something may be different, that the days ahead of us will be better than the last. In the same way that we are starting a brand new year, Jesus was also beginning a new phase in his ministry when he was 30 years old. Now, what happened next was very strange, and it will help us as we start this new year. After being baptized in the Jordan River, Jesus was led up by the Spirit to be tempted by the devil. Satan was waiting for the moment he would try to deceive Jesus, as he did with Adam and Eve. If Satan could have led Jesus to put himself first, the whole war would have been lost. So Satan started with food. Yes, food. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, Jesus was extremely hungry. Why not eat if eating by itself is not wrong? Well, Satan was tempting Jesus to work for his physical needs first, doubting that the Father would provide for him. But Jesus knew that true wisdom has not only to do with choosing between good and evil, but also to choose what is best between two good things. So, Jesus put God first. Then the devil took him to the temple. That time, Jesus was tempted to put his senses first. Would he completely trust in God's promises and His Word about protection? Or would he constantly expect visible evidences? But Jesus, again, decided to rely solely on His Word and put God first. Finally, the devil presented the very mission Jesus came to fulfill and offered an easier path to avoid the crown of thorns while looking for the crown of glory. This third temptation is to take shortcuts instead of putting God first and deny self. Throughout this year, you will be tempted, not only to put your physical needs and senses first, but also to take shortcuts. But we can learn from Jesus that sacrifice ever precedes joy and leads to it. If we trust Him and put God first, He promises that He will provide for all our needs in Christ Jesus. This is your first opportunity this year to put God first with your tithe and promise. Jesus put God first. His example compels us to do the same. As we return the tithe and promise, we are challenged to put God first.
Welcome back to Rays of Hope Masikhanye. My name is Sivu Kotela. I am still your host. And to conclude this episode, I am now joined by Pastor Patrick Stander, who is a marriage officer and gospel minister. And he's going to be helping me to look into the topic of premarital counseling. Pastor Patrick,
Yes, sir.
welcome to Rays of Hope.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you, man, for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. Premarital counseling. Perhaps we need to define this. But when you look at the word, it says premarital counseling. Perhaps before I ask you to define premarital counseling for me, maybe define marital counseling. What is it?
Yeah, a simple way of looking at it, it's basically the folks are already in it.
Sure.
And issues might come up,
Sure.
or there might be no issues at all. And then there's intervention by an external person. We sit down, we talk. Now, normally when people hear the word counseling, they think you're going to give them information. We don't do that.
Sure.
We talk through the
Sure.
process, and we try to enable
Sure.
the parties involved to actually deal or grapple with the issues themselves. So we are taking them from them struggling to deal with it, and then we try to enable and help them to actually
Sure.
deal with it
Sure.
and come up with some workable solutions.
I love that. And because they are already here. And then premarital counseling?
Premarital counseling, also another way of looking at it, it's a process of premarital education. You're not in it yet. You know, you're getting ready. You're
Sure.
contemplating
Sure.
it. And so now there's a period where you start preparing, and we take you through a formal process where we sit down, we talk through it, and we try to, get you going in the right direction.
Sure. And when is the right time to start with premarital counseling? Number one. Number two, maybe on the issue of its purpose, is it to help you decide whether to get married, or is it for people that have already decided, but to prepare them for the decision that they have taken?
Okay. The question about when the right time is it before you start negotiating, the lobola,
yes.
or when?
Yeah.
One of my colleagues used to say, don't come to me if you already have a date, because you're not going to listen. So
there's some truth there.
Yeah. So answering that question is probably up to the couple.
Sure.
Ultimately, when do they start?
Sure.
But you should at least look at a period of 3 months or more, before the intended wedding or the date or that you might have or that you might not have.
Sure.
So ultimately, you need to decide when are you going to start,
Sure.
whether you have a date or not.
Sure.
Now, is it to prepare people?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is to prepare. Is it to check whether I'm ready or not? That happens sometimes in the process,
Okay.
where you discover I'm not ready
Sure.
for this. After going through the thing, you discover, no, I should actually cancel.
Sure. One of the reasons I'm asking that, because I've come across people that are resistant to the idea of premarital counseling because they see it as we are going. It's a platform where we get to decide, especially when they see red flags. They know, hey, we don't want a third person to confirm what I'm already seeing or fearing here. Have you seen that to be your experience as well?
It happens at times, when you sit down, you talk to people, and this is why I'm bringing up the issue of you, in that context, get an opportunity to actually reconsider.
Sure.
So we are preparing you for the big day.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
you are still open.
You are open,
Yeah.
because the big day might be the day when you say, no, this is not for me. Remember, people in reality, you've got the dress,
Sure.
the tux, they're preparing it, the cake, color scheme, you've invited people.
Sure.
Now, if you are going to be honest, and this is the issue, we sit there, we try to have honest conversations. If you're going to be honest about what's happening in that situation, where you talk, where you reflect openly, you should be able to hear, see the red flags, because the date we are discussing might end up being your funeral, and we hope it's not the case. The people that you have invited might be coming to your funeral. You understand? And it happens at times. Where people get into dangerous situations,
Even though they see the red flags, yeah.
And that's why we have the conversation.
Sure. Pastor Pet, a quick one. What are some of the myths that are prevalent out there about premarital counseling?
I think you've mentioned one of them.
Okay.
That those guys there, they are going to tell me not to do it, or they're going to tell me what to do. One of the other things that also happens is that folks think that the premarital counseling process is a fail-safe, or rather it's a guarantee that you're not going to get divorced, you're not going to get into what we call marital distress, where you have problems. That's not true. So maybe we should just limit ourselves to those, but there are positive myths that I'm going to have this very pleasant experience because I've gone through this. Then there are those who say, no, I don't even want to go there because those things that I'm going to hear, no. I might not like what I will hear. But get into it. You might like it.
All right, Pastor, now that you've mentioned that, I think then it's good for us to look into what is then the content of premarital counseling. What are some of the topics that you guys get to cover there when you are going through it?
There's what we sometimes call contextual information that we deal with. In other words, where do you come from? The makeup of your family.
As individuals now.
As individuals, yeah. Are you the middle child? Are you the firstborn? The family of origin.
Are you saying those have an impact on the...
It definitely has an impact on the issues of compatibility, how you view yourself, and how you end up viewing the other person. Do you come from a male-dominated household or a female-dominated household? What were the family dynamics in the family of origin? So the issues dealing with that we call it contextual issues. Then we deal with intra-personal issues. Yourself, what's happening with you, your personality type, how you view yourself, your perception of who you are, your worldview. And then the interpersonal issues, how you communicate, your communication skills, conflict management. Because your conflict management style, that's learned behavior. And so when we talk about it, you get to discover, this is why I react like this way. This is why. Then we also deal with issues of finances. Couples fight over money, and that thing can mess up your entire situation. So we deal with that. We deal with issues of goals. Do you have personal goals that you have set for yourself? Do you want to further your education? We deal with how we manage in-laws and people that are outside of the marriage. How, the limits and the parameters that you should set for those folks. And we also tell couples, guys, nobody has been in the marriage that you guys are going to build. And when the two of you get married, it will be the first time that the two of you are married to each other. So you also deal with the myths, some of the myths and some of the irrational, stuff that you are thinking about this. And you start comparing yourself with other people. Then we say, no. It will be the first time.
Sure. I like that. Basically, what I'm hearing to be saying as well is that while there are principles that are common in all marriages, and which are things that you look into, that you will have in-laws, that you are bringing this, but while those principles are common in all marriages, but your marriage is unique.
Yep.
And what makes it unique is because the two of you are unique. And
Then that's an important thing to understand. And normally, for instance, when I would sit down with a couple before we have our first, formal session, we talk. We say, okay, just understand that when we start this process, because we have a number of sessions over 2 months, 3 months where we meet, we first have like orientation. This is how we're going to do it. This is how often we will be meeting. These are the aspects that we will be covering. Please remember, as we talk, as you discover things about yourself, about your future spouse or the intended spouse, remember, the day when the two of you get married, it is the first time that there's a marriage between the two of you, because you've never been married to each other. So you can expect fireworks.
Sure. Maybe I should ask you before I ask. Maybe I should ask you, because now, why is it important to go for premarital counseling? And as you ask that, is there also a need for people that have been married before to go for premarital counseling?
Okay, that's a good question, because some research actually suggests that folk who have not gone for it end up getting divorced. Now, if you've been in a previous marriage, it's also good for you to come and with the new spouse or the person that you intend to marry to actually go through the process. Because, and I like to use the analogy of people who learn how to drive. You pass the theory, you study the book, you go through what we call in South Africa K53, you go through all that, you go to write the theory, you get the license eventually. That doesn't mean that you actually are now not going to have any accidents. And so they actually tell you, guy, don't learn from people who are not professionals and who are not trained on how to do that, because they're going to also teach you their mistakes. They're going to teach you their bad driving behavior. And so if you come from a previous marriage, it would be good for you to actually go and sit down and look at what can we learn? What is it that will help us? And this time around, to do it better.
I'm with you. And generally, first time, why? I mean, of course, we've been talking about premarital counseling. Why is it important?
Yeah, why is it important? That's a very good question. In terms of its importance, not only is what will be happening between the two parties unique and new, but it also sets the tone for future marriages that might come out of that household. If they have children, the situation in that home will be impacted directly by what is happening in that home. And so the premarital education, the premarital counseling process is critical, because they're preparing the next generation of marriages. The daughter might say, I never want to be married to anybody. Why? Because of what the daughter has observed.
Sure.
The son might say, these people only act lovey-dovey when they propose. Why? Because the home where I come from, they also started like that.
Sure.
The young man that might show up at your house, break into your home, stealing your stuff to get a fix, might be trying to medicate.
It's coming from a home.
It's coming from a broken home. So the society is made up of households.
Sure.
And those households come out of, it's a consequence of marriages, and it's a result of marriages.
Yeah.
And so why is it important? Because we are setting the tone, not only for what we are starting, but for the next generation of marriages.
I like that, Pastor Pet. Now there may be, some people that are watching us right now and who are saying, hey, I wish I had heard this information before I got married, but I'm already married now. I guess I've lost it. Is it too late? People who have lost premarital counseling and they are married now, what would be your advice to them?
We have marriage enrichment. In other words, you have to renew your license every now and again.
Sure.
Okay, you have to go, you have your eye test done and all that, so that the traffic department can check whether you are still okay.
I love the analogy.
You're still okay to drive. So we have the marriage enrichment engagements so that you get to learn and you're never too old to learn.
I'm with you.
You're never too old to learn.
I absolutely love that. Now the last one, of course, which is linked to what you've just said. So when you get married, finally I got married. Bye-bye, premarital. And but I love the analogy of driving, and which is very apt, to be used here. Is that you get your license not after years of driving, but you get your license so that you can drive for years. And that is how similar it is with marriage. You get your marriage certificate not because you've succeeded in marriage, but so that you get given permission to start marriage. And your thoughts on that, and as we close?
Yeah, that's a powerful way of looking at it. Not after years, but so that you can drive. For years. And that is a very good way of putting it, that this thing is a work and it becomes second nature. We get into the car, start the ignition, we drive. And we don't think about it even. We do it. It becomes second nature. And so the more we practice does not make perfect, it makes permanent.
Practice makes permanent. I love that.
Thank you, sir.
Pastor Pat, that is a perfect place to end it. Thank you so much once again for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Our viewers at home, I trust that you were challenged and inspired by that conversation with Pastor Patrick Stander and the two guests that came before him. And remember, if you have any questions or comments, please write them to the email address that you see at the bottom of the screen, masikhanye@cc.adventist.org. Or you may send a WhatsApp message or message to the text, the number that you are seeing on the screen. Remember, the word of the Lord says that as you receive the light, don't keep it, don't hide it, but go out there and share it and make this world a better place. Until next time, Masikhanye.